Okay, today I'd like to talk to you about Emily Dickinson. And according to a website called poets.org, in 1830, Emily Dickinson was born in Amherst, Massachusetts, and she attended Mount Holyoke Female Seminary in South Hadley, but because of severe homesickness, this led to her return home after just 1 year. Throughout her life, she seldom left her home. There were scarce visitors to her home. She just avoided most contact. However, the relationships that she did have with people had enormous impact on her thoughts and on her poetry. And by the 1860s, Dickinson lived in almost complete physical isolation from the outside world. However, she remained active, and she wrote correspondence to friends, and she read widely. She spent a great deal of her time with her family, and her father, Edward Dickinson, was active in politics, both state and national politics. He served 1 term in Congress. Now, her brother, Austin, attended law school and became an attorney, and her younger sister, Lavinia, lived at home as well and lived almost in complete isolation, as did Emily. The two of them, Austin and Lavinia, were her closest companions and offered her intellectual stimulation throughout her lifetime. Dickinson's poetry reflects her loneliness, and the speakers of her poems generally live in a state of want, but her poems also mark intimate recollections of inspirational moments, which are decidedly life-giving and suggest the possibility of happiness at times. Her work was heavily influenced by metaphysical poets of the 17th century England. Also, her poetry was influenced by the Bible, especially the book of Revelation. While Dickinson was extremely prolific as a poet and regularly enclosed poems and letters to her friends, she was not publicly recognized during her lifetime. The first volume of her work was published posthumously in 1890, and the last was published in 1955. She died in Amherst in 1886, and upon her death, Dickinson's family discovered 40 hand-bound volumes of nearly 1,800 of her poems. The handwritten poems show a variety of dash-like marks of various sizes, and the poems were initially unbound and published according to aesthetics of her many early editors, removing her unusual varied dashes and replacing them with traditional punctuation. But since then, her poems have been restored, and now we can view them in their original format. So at this time, I would like to recite one of her poems, and she did not give titles to her poetry, and so they're just numbered. This poem is number 303. It's known as The Soul Selects Her Own Society, published in 1862. The soul selects her own society, then shuts the door to her divine majority, present no more. Unmoved, she notes the chariots pausing at her low gate. Unmoved, an emperor be kneeling upon her mat. I've known her from ample nations. Choose one, then close the valves of her attention, like stone. So what do you make of this poem? I find this poem puzzling. It is not easily explained. However, paradoxically, it seems simple on the surface, doesn't it? It's just about a person choosing her own friends. Yet the point of view is difficult in this poem. It begins in third person and then abruptly switches to first person in the last stanza. The soul is personified as a woman inviting guests into her home and then shutting the door to the majority outside. And the speaker refers to an emperor, someone with greater rank than she has, kneeling at her low gate. And the final stanza throws me off. Who is this first person I who claims to have known the soul from an ample nation? There's a choice that has to be made here. She says, choose one. Is this first person speaker the higher ranking emperor? Or is this a friend who was once part of her inner circle? Who is this person? Who is the speaker of this poem? The imagery of the valves reminds me of the chambers of the human heart, and the heart seems to be turning to stone. Is this poem about what happens to the soul when it shuts everyone out? And the choice of living in isolation or taking part in the majority, the social network? Would Emily Dickinson have used Facebook in her day? Or would she have avoided it? Was she protesting something? Did she deplore the provincial lifestyle of her Amherst community? Does this poem somehow reflect her protest of social class? Perhaps she did not want to play the social popularity game in her community. She did not care about being seen at the right places with the right people. Or perhaps she cared a lot. Maybe this is not even the subject at all. Do you think she is protesting cliques? Or do you think she's promoting them in the poem? According to a famous study, Elmtown's youth, a less advantageous powerful determinant of clique formation is socioeconomic class. And this study revealed that almost never did adolescents from one social class associate with students from a class that was 2 ranks higher or lower. A diverse array of follow-up studies have confirmed that class consciousness steadily increases with adolescence, so that by mid-adolescence, clique membership across significantly different social backgrounds is highly anomalous. And Emily Dickinson, of course, grew up in a homogeneous, socially affluent area of the country. Although the Civil War was raging and there was poverty in many places in America, it seems as if it did not exist in Amherst. Had Dickinson ever met anyone outside of her social class? Was she reflecting antisocial behavior in her poetry? Or was she depressed? Or did she feel trapped by the traditions and expectations of her society? Who was this woman, Emily Dickinson? And what was her poetry really about?